Hey guys, so right now I'm going to review Big Hero 6. Big Hero 6 is this year's Disney movie. And if you guys haven't noticed, Disney has been consistently releasing one big film every year, apart from those released by Pixar. And their films have actually been pretty good lately. In 2009, they had The Princess and the Frog, 2010 had Tangled, 2011 had Winnie the Pooh, 2012 had Wreck-It Ralph, and just last year we had Frozen. And if you don't know anything about Big Hero 6, think of it as more of in a similar vein as Wreck-It Ralph than, say, Frozen or Tangled. In fact, I think it's the very first Disney animated film that will be based off comics from Marvel. And I don't mean the X-Men or the Avengers will just show up in the movie or anything. But this film is actually based on the Marvel comic book Big Hero 6, which was released a few years ago. Well, anyways, so what I thought about the movie. Judging animated films for me is significantly more difficult than judging live-action films because there's this inherent sense that animated films are made for children and therefore should follow different standards. Now, while I do think it makes sense for animated films and live-action films to follow different criteria, however, I do think that most films should follow the same standard of quality based on some fundamental aspects of storytelling. My problem with Big Hero 6 is that it doesn't push the genre in any new or novel direction. Unless you count giving your characters Japanese names some step towards globalization. Which, on a side note, is probably the only things Japanese about the characters of the film. Now, this might seem a little unfair, but I do think that this revolutionizing quality of film is present in all forms of media, and especially in animation. For example, Japanese animation greats such as Hayao Miyazaki or Satoshi Kon have been able to imbue their films with such wondrous worlds and great personality and impeccably novel plots. And we see this too in American animation, just like in the Pixar films like Toy Story, WALL-E, or Up, in which they create these very fascinating narratives and fill them up with very memorable characters. Even within Disney's own canon, in recent years they've been able to make some pretty good films. For example, personally, I am not a big fan of Frozen, but then the film did push the genre in a new way in that it sidestepped this trope that a woman needs a man in her life, like all the other Disney princess movies. So that was something. And even without all the novel plot and characterization, some films work really well just based on their simplicity, like the French animated film from 2012, Ernest et Célestine. And instead, Big Hero 6 becomes one cliche-filled, franchise-heavy potential superhero animated film. Think animated Avengers, but with teenagers and they have gadgets. Like, if you take the best and worst of Marvel and Disney and put it into one big movie, that is Big Hero 6. And while it does sound pretty cool when you put it that way, the plot does get exceedingly predictable, especially towards the second half of the film. To be fair though, Big Hero 6 does some things really well too. The alternate world of San Francisco, which is San Francisco and Tokyo, was very impeccably designed. And even all the other places that Hiro and his friends go to were all very gorgeously animated. And personally, I think this is the best animated film I've seen in a very long time. I saw it in 3D, and personally I hate 3D, but then for some reason I didn't mind it in this film. It was really well animated. And even the technology in the film, in Japanese fashion, is very meticulously designed and really cool actually. And in terms of memorable characters, Hiro Hamada is actually a pretty distinct protagonist, and that he doesn't follow the main boring passive character trope that is so common in so many animated films. But then again, I'm also not that familiar with the Big Hero 6 comic that the film is based off of, so I'm not really sure how much of this character of Hiro is based on the comic and how much was created for this movie. My problem, though, was in the supporting cast and the very paper-thin characters, with every other character simply devoid of any sort of characterization at all, apart from maybe some silly nicknames. However, what truly elevates this movie from being just a decent one is definitely Baymax. If you guys have seen the trailers, Baymax is that big, fat, white marshmallow machine thing that is sort of like a sidekick of Hiro. And I don't want to spoil anything, but in every single scene Baymax is in, he steals the show. And it's so funny, and it's so heartfelt, and it's just... Baymax is such a great character. In a sort of similar way that Groot does in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie released a few months ago. Baymax's similarities with Groot extends far beyond just being a funny side gag, but also in terms of his role in the plot that Groot serves in Guardians of the Galaxy. But it isn't really that bad of a thing, because Groot was pretty awesome. So earlier, I mentioned that I was reviewing this movie in the context of overall film in general and not trying to just point it down to animated films. And in that sense, I do think there's a lot of wasted potential in this film. However, I think sometimes some films work in ways that are independent of criticism. Sometimes we just watch movies to have fun, despite whatever cliches and predictable plots it may have. And in some cases, those are the reasons why we watch films. Because of that reassuring feeling that no matter what troubles we may have, at the end of it all, it will be okay. And everything is going to be fine. And sometimes that's enough in a movie. So when you walk into Big Hero 6, don't expect it to revolutionize animation or don't expect it to have really deep characterization or deep plot. Know of its flaws and redundancies and cliches, and just let go of it all. I think sometimes it's when we stop being so overly critical, not just in film or animated films, or just in life in general. It's only then that we're able to really enjoy and experience what's right in front of us, just like how kids do. And I think that's how you should see this film. So, random trivia. This might be pretty obvious for those who are already familiar with the Big Hero 6 comic books. But after watching the film, I tried to read more about the backstory of the comic book, and I realized that it has nothing to do with the ones presented in the film. For example, in the film, Baymax, the best character ever, is created by Hero's brother as some sort of project for his school, and the function of Baymax is this healthcare assistant. However, in the comics, Baymax is created by Hero from the brain of his dead father in order to fight against these things called Everwraiths. And these Everwraiths are the astral embodiment of the people who died during the two atomic bombs in Japan in 1945. So that's pretty dark. Oh yeah, and in the comic books, Baymax can turn into a dragon. And so some end notes. I think that Big Hero 6 has the potential to be one of the most popular and most profitable franchises that Disney has ever had. I mean, it won't reach the level of Frozen because it doesn't have any musical component to it, and it wasn't a princess movie. But then, I do think it's going to do really, really well. So anyway, that's what I thought of Big Hero 6. It should be coming out on November 7th in the United States. I'm not sure when it comes out in the Philippines or in Australia. But yeah, so I will see you guys on my Monday video.